So, Allie, if they knew this wasn't true, do we have an answer to why the campaign ran with it and is still running with it anyway?
That's the question, because the call with the city manager is not in dispute. The Vance team did talk with the city manager, and you see the Wall Street Journal reporting around that now. I did get a statement from the Vance team, a spokesperson, and I'll put that up on the screen for you while I read it. They say that Senator Vance has received countless messages from residents of Springfield on the disastrous effects of Kamala Harris's immigration policies. They list here a shortage of affordable housing, stressing public resources, declining public safety, all of which could be in the conversation. But of course, the current conversation is the one that Trump himself repeated on the debate stage around these unfounded claims of killing pets, dogs and cats in the Springfield area. That, of course, is an incendiary claim. It remains unfounded. And now we see the fallout in a town like Springfield, where you have officials at the state and local level trying to sort of put this genie back in the bottle. But the disinformation is out there at this point. And I'm struck that this could be a conversation around policy, around housing. And certainly those are the conversations that many Republicans are stressing the Trump-Vance team should be having as they try to have a dialogue and a debate over the policies that are at play in this election cycle. There are clear contrasts between Democrats and Republicans on that issue. But really, the idea that the Vance team and the Trump team are doubling down on the idea that rumor means it could be true, it could not, is really a question of if national political figures should be amplifying things they aren't sure are true, but are hearing from their constituents anyway. Clearly, though, we are seeing this Republican ticket do what it has done since I started covering Trump in 2015, which is having a moment of controversy and doubling down and continuing to just say the thing. In all my years covering Trump, I've never heard him say, I was wrong, I apologize, let's double back on this. And certainly it doesn't appear that that's going to be a new strategy that's introduced anytime soon. You see that from the former president, you see that from his running mate, and they have it again there in that statement.
It is true, Robbie, this campaign never seems to backtrack, even in situations like this. Is that because being right or wrong isn't the point? The point is to put Trump back in the middle of the national conversation. They did the right thing. Somebody on his staff fact-checked it.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, if Trump all of a sudden started tethering what he says to the truth, I mean, we'd be in a whole new world. This is the same guy who said you could get rid of COVID by drinking bleach and said he won the election and there was massive voter fraud, all of which are completely false. So this is very typical for him. I think you're touching on an important point, though, and that is that Trump, I don't think he really cares about the substance, but he certainly doesn't want to get into the substance. This is all about ego. This is all about fighting and creating controversy and constantly being at war against the media and these other forces he tries to conjure up. And so this is the only way he knows how to operate. And this is a fight he likes to have. And the challenge for Democrats is it's hard for us to get through with our message when he's doing this, right? It sort of sucks up all the oxygen. But as I know some Republicans are saying, there actually is a substantive issue here on immigration, and he just can't bring himself to engage in that substantive way.
I have a number of what I think are substantive things to talk about. Let me start with this one, Michael. We know there is a psychological cost. We know that people who live in that town say that they are scared. Nobody wants to see little kids having to go into school with state troopers standing outside. There is, though, also a financial cost, whether you're talking about the short-term cost of responding to all these bomb threats, I think 33 as of yesterday, or the potentially long-term cost if Haitians being targeted decide to leave town. There was a local CEO who said it puzzles him. By the way, his family has owned a business in Springfield for 100 years. It puzzles him why J.D. Vance doesn't understand the value of a stable workforce. So why does someone like J.D. Vance think it's a good idea to push an idea that's hurting his own constituents' bottom line and, frankly, local and state governments' bottom line? Somebody has to pay for all this security and response.
Yeah, send the bill to the Trump-Vance campaign. If I'm the mayor of that city, that's exactly what I do. I'd send the bill right to them. And I'd have the parents of those students and the teachers call the campaign and let them hear exactly what their words have done. and let them know exactly what their words have cost and continue to cost that city. Make them pay the consequence for a lie they know to be a lie. And the fact, exactly what are we talking about here? We're talking about knowable facts that are ignored by a presidential candidate and his running mate, that they persist in lying to people, not just in that community, but around the country about something they know is factually wrong. And yet we still treat this as is somehow news to be covering the fact that they're continuing to perpetuate the lie. Where's the consequence here? And so I think that, this is just the tip. You think this is the last cup of BS to come out of this campaign? Get ready, buckle up, because this is not about caring for J.D. Vance, caring for your constituents. Oh, that is about as foreign to him as anything else that's related to solid, sound public policy. Where is the conversation? So this is the point we're at. And I don't know what we expect to come next from this. And yet we continue to talk about it and covering it as if somehow these two individuals are going to, between the two of them, grow a conscience and actually say, oh, you know what, my bad. My staff called and told me, check this out, and told me that this was wrong. I misunderstood. Yeah, I lied about whatever. But they're not going to do that. And I think we're going to keep doing this sort of roller coaster ride with this campaign, and it's crazy.
So in lieu of that, Robbie, to your point, how does the Harris campaign message their side of this? What are your thoughts about how they've done it so far? And do you think that actually in the long run, we know who Donald Trump is appealing to, we know who J.D. Vance is appealing to, but do we think in the long run this is actually going to hurt them?
Well, the Trump campaign, I believe, has a ceiling around 46, 47% of the vote. They've got to break through that to win this election. They won in 2016 because of third-party vote share. That didn't happen in 2020, and they lost. So the current trajectory they're on isn't a winning trajectory. I think the Harris campaign has done a great job with this. We saw in the debate, she really weaponized this lack of substance, this obsession with spreading lies that he knows aren't true. So I think she's done a good job there. I find it ironic today. The president is complaining he doesn't have enough security. And meanwhile, he's creating a security crisis in a town. These parents don't have a private security force in the Secret Service. Of course, it doesn't excuse the threats that have been made against the president and the attempt to assassinate him. All that's completely unacceptable. But part of what I think you're going to hear the Harris campaign say is, this is Trump's America. It is dangerous. He will actually make your communities much less safe through his lies. The bully pulpit won't be a way to speak for the people, but a weapon used against the people. And this, to me, is a perfect example of that. And mind you, as you said, this is J.D. Vance's own state. He's doing this against his own constituents. So imagine what he'll do when it's the entire country.
So, Michael, I'm going to ask you a question that deserves a 1-hour answer minimum, and you've got a minute to answer it. So, sorry. But there was an article in the Haitian Times that was so great because it makes a point that the backstory of what happened in Springfield isn't unique. Quote, it's very much a part of a huge familiar trend across America, the arrival of new, mostly black and brown immigrants in majority white small towns and larger diverse cities alike that are not equipped to handle the influx. If the Trump campaign wasn't so focused on demonizing the people who have come in legally, who have jobs and are contributing to the economy of the community, what is the larger, more constructive conversation about how we help these towns and cities deal with understandable, I'm not talking about the racist part of it, understandable growing pains when other people come in and it changes their way of life?
But the racism is a part of it.
Of course, it is.
You can't set that aside. I mean, it impacts the economics, it impacts the policy, it impacts a lot of things. But here's the dirty little secret in many respects. What was going on in this town before this crazy started? Every report I've seen says that the immigrant community was welcome, that they were, contributing and growing that community. That town had lost population. It had dropped from some 83,000 people to down to 60 or under 60,000 people. And so this influx of migrants who were there to work, hardworking, establishing businesses and working in the community, no one was complaining about that. No one was upset about that. And that's the storyline across the country until some politician or some racist organization or group of community people decide they want to other these folks because they don't like the fact that things aren't going their way. Or in the case of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, they think they're going to get some political capital gain from it, not in that town, by the way, not even in the state of Ohio, but in other pockets of this country where they need to shore up their vote or they need to affirm their credentials with a base that has gone MAGA and racist. So, this is the truth of the matter. There weren't story headlines coming out of Springfield before this that said, oh, you know what, America, we have a problem here in this small town. And that is what I think we really lose sight of when these moments occur, is that before folks were accepting these migrants and they were integrating and they were working and they were productive until J.D. Vance and Donald Trump decide to other them and turn their lives and the lives of that town upside down.
Let me add just one more fact. Culture Fest, which was going to be a celebration of the diversity of this community that a vast swath of this community was excited about, had to be canceled because of security concerns.